The jungle night was silent except for the sound of soft breathing and distant howls. The twin moons shone pale light over the thick alien forest. A human explorer named Ethan Ward was leading a small research team through the dense terrain of planet Valara, a world filled with strange beauty and dangerous life. They were searching for rare plants that could heal wounds faster than any known medicine. But tonight something went terribly wrong. Behind Ethan, an alien girl named Lyra stumbled. Her silver skin shimmered under the moonlight, and her deep blue eyes were filled with fear. She whispered, "Something bit me," before collapsing to the ground. Ethan rushed to her side and saw 2 dark puncture marks on her leg, already turning purple. The others froze. "It's a serpent bite," one of the alien guards shouted, stepping back in panic. "No one survives that venom. It kills within minutes." Ethan knelt beside her, his heartbeat racing. "Don't say that," he muttered, tearing a strip from his sleeve. He wrapped it above the bite to slow the poison, his hands trembling. Lyra's breathing grew shallow, her silver veins darkening. The rest of the team backed away, afraid the venom could spread through touch. "She's doomed," another alien whispered. "Leave her. We must move before the serpents return," but Ethan didn't move. He looked at Lyra's face, pale and sweating, her eyes pleading weakly for help. She had saved his life 2 days ago when a plant trap tried to crush him. He couldn't just stand and watch her die now. Without thinking further, Ethan pressed his lips to the wound and sucked the venom out, spitting it away quickly. The aliens gasped in horror. "He's mad," one shouted. "That poison can kill humans even faster." Ethan ignored them. He kept doing it again and again, tasting the bitterness of death in his mouth. Lyra's hand weakly gripped his wrist as her voice trembled. "You'll die. Stop." He looked down at her and whispered, "Not today. Not while I can still fight for you." The forest around them grew darker. Something was moving in the shadows. The serpents returning. Ethan didn't stop. His head was spinning from the toxin, but he held on, refusing to give up. Finally, Lyra's color began to return slightly and her breathing steadied. Ethan fell back, dizzy, his lips stained purple. Lyra opened her eyes halfway, whispering, Why would you do this?" He smiled faintly. "Because humans don't leave friends behind." Moments later, a deep hiss echoed from the trees. A massive serpent, glowing with bioluminescent scales, slithered toward them. The guards raised their plasma rifles, fear on their faces. Ethan tried to stand, but his body felt weak. The venom he had swallowed was burning inside him. The serpent's eyes glowed red as it reared its head high, ready to strike. Ethan pulled his blaster, even though his hands shook. "Run!" he shouted. "Get her to safety." But Lyra, barely conscious, reached out to him. Her voice cracked. "No, you saved me. I won't leave you." Before anyone could react, the serpent lunged. Ethan fired, but the plasma shot only grazed its neck. The alien guards fired too, beams of light flashing through the jungle. The serpent roared in pain and vanished into the darkness. The air smelled of burnt ozone and blood. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Lyra crawled toward him and pressed her glowing hand to his chest. Her species had healing powers, though limited. Her energy pulsed into his body, trying to fight the spreading venom. He looked into her eyes, faintly smiling. "Guess we're both stubborn." Tears fell from her eyes. "You humans, you risk everything for others. My people would never understand that." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Then maybe it's time they learn. The team stood in stunned silence. They had seen courage before, but nothing like this. As the twin moons shone brighter above, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The human and the alien girl sat together, half dead but alive, bound now by something stronger than fear, and far beyond the jungle. In the alien capital, a signal began to flash. The serpent attack had been recorded. Someone powerful was watching. Someone who would soon demand to know why a human had saved an alien noble's daughter. The night was not over, and the real story was just beginning. The next morning, soft rays of pale light filtered through the misty leaves of planet Valara's forest. The air smelled of damp moss and faint plasma smoke. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, his head pounding and throat burning like fire. For a moment he didn't know where he was. Then he saw her, Lyra, lying beside him, breathing softly. Her skin had regained its silver glow and the dark veins around the bite had vanished. Ethan tried to sit up, but dizziness hit him hard. He coughed, tasting bitterness still clinging to his mouth. The venom was still inside him, and every heartbeat made his vision blur. Lyra woke up at his sound, her eyes widening as she saw him. "You're still alive," she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled faintly, though his lips were cracked. You too, he replied. That's what matters. The alien guards stood at a distance, whispering among themselves. None of them dared to come closer. They had watched what Ethan did last night, but none could understand why. Saving an alien, especially one from Lyra's highborn family, was not something a human was ever expected to do. One of the guards, a tall one with emerald eyes, finally spoke. You risked your life for her. Why? Humans aren't bound to us by any code. Ethan looked at him with tired eyes. Maybe you should try something new. It's called compassion. The guard frowned, unsure how to respond. Lyra watched the exchange quietly, her gaze filled with something she had never felt before. Respect. No one had ever disobeyed her clan's strict rules to save her. No one but this human. But before anyone could rest, a sharp alarm beeped from the team's communicator. The signal that was sent last night had reached the Valaran Capital Command. The screen flickered, showing the stern face of a high-ranking alien official, Lyra's father, Lord Caelthyr, the wealthiest and most feared noble on the planet. His golden eyes narrowed as he saw his daughter lying on the forest floor beside a human. What is the meaning of this? His voice thundered even through the small device. Lyra tried to speak, but Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. She was bitten by a serpent, he said. I saved her. Caelthyr's expression darkened. You touched her? Ethan frowned. Touched her? I saved her life. For a moment there was silence. Then Caelthyr's voice grew colder. Human interference is forbidden. You will remain there until the Royal Medic Unit arrives. Do not move, the signal cut off. The guards looked uneasy. They knew what that tone meant. Humans who broke rules often disappeared without a trace. Lyra looked at Ethan with fear in her eyes. He doesn't understand. He'll think you disrespected me. Ethan laughed weakly. Well, I've been misunderstood before. I'll survive. But his body betrayed him. He coughed again. This time blood mixing with black venom that had entered his veins. Lyra gasped and rushed to his side. She placed both hands over his chest, her palms glowing bright blue. Don't talk, she whispered. You saved me. Now it's my turn. The others stepped back as her power flared. Energy waves rippled through the air, bending the light around them. Lyra's healing energy was rare. Only royal blood could channel it. It wasn't meant to be used on humans, but she didn't care. Minutes passed. The forest grew still. Finally, Ethan took a deep breath and opened his eyes again. The burning pain had faded. Lyra collapsed beside him, weak from the effort. Why did you do that? He asked softly. She smiled faintly. Because humans taught me something last night. You don't leave someone behind. Before he could answer, a powerful hum echoed through the trees. A royal transport ship was descending nearby. Its engines shook the ground, sending leaves swirling. The guards stiffened, preparing to salute. Lyra turned to Ethan, panic in her eyes. They'll take you away. My father won't let this go. Ethan struggled to stand. Then let's not be here when they land. She stared at him in shock. You mean, run? He grinned. Unless you want to explain how the noble's daughter fell for a human who sucks venom for a living. Lyra's cheeks flushed silver blue. You're impossible, he chuckled. That's what keeps me alive. They slipped into the dense forest just as the royal ship touched down. Guards in gold armor rushed out, scanning the area. One of them shouted, The human and the lady are gone. Caelthyr's voice roared through the comms. Find them! I want that human alive. I'll deal with him myself. As Ethan and Lyra disappeared deeper into the alien jungle, hunted by soldiers and secrets, neither of them knew that what started as a bite in the dark would soon change not just their lives, but the fate of two species forever. And above them, hidden drones recorded everything, broadcasting their escape to unseen eyes across the stars. Rain poured down from the emerald sky of planet Valara, turning the soil into a mirror of silver puddles. Ethan pushed through the thick vines, his breathing heavy, his heart thundering in his chest. Beside him, Lyra struggled to keep up, her silver robe torn and soaked, her steps quick but shaky. Behind them, faint mechanical hums filled the air, the sound of royal drones scanning the jungle, searching for them. Keep moving, Ethan said, glancing over his shoulder. They're tracking our heat signatures. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. My father's men don't stop until they find their target. You shouldn't have come with me. Ethan grinned despite the danger. You think I'd let you face an army alone? Not my style. She shook her head, confused and amazed. On her planet, loyalty was bought, not earned. No one risked death for someone else, especially not a human. And yet here he was, limping through poison vines and acid mist just to keep her safe. The forest around them was alive, whispering, watching. Strange glowing creatures darted between the trees, their wings like glass. But there were darker things too. Unseen predators that moved when the wind didn't. They reached a fallen log, half buried in mud. Ethan crouched beside it, pulling out a small scanner from his belt. There, he said, pointing to a faint pulse on the screen. An old research bunker, probably abandoned. We can hide there until dark. Lyra's eyes widened. That place is off limits. It's from the old war. My people sealed it centuries ago. Perfect, Ethan replied. Means no one will look for us there. As they ran toward it, Lyra stumbled, clutching her leg where the serpent had bitten her. Ethan caught her before she fell, his arms steady and warm. You okay? He asked. She nodded weakly. Just pain. The Venom's memory still burns. Ethan looked at her leg, worry filling his eyes. We'll get you treated. I promise, she smiled faintly. You make promises too easily, human. He smiled back. And I keep them too. By the time they reached the bunker, the jungle was glowing with nightfall. The structure stood half-broken, covered in moss, its metal surface rusted but intact. Ethan scanned the entrance, then pried open a cracked door with his knife. The air inside was cold and smelled of old metal and dust. They stepped inside. The lights flickered weakly, revealing ancient symbols and strange machines, remnants of an era when humans and aliens fought side by side before everything fell apart. Lyra touched one of the walls, her expression soft. This was built before my people feared yours, she whispered. When we were allies, Ethan looked around. Seems like a lifetime ago. Before they could rest, the faint hum of a drone echoed nearby. Red scanning lights cut through the trees outside. Ethan quickly shut the door and whispered, "Get down." The drone hovered past, scanning the area. Its lens glowed bright red as it stopped near the entrance. Ethan held his breath, pulling Lyra close to him. Her heartbeat raced against his chest. For a moment, everything went silent except the rain outside and the faint hum of the machine. Then the drone moved away, following a false signal deeper into the jungle. Ethan exhaled. That was close. Lyra looked at him, her eyes shimmering. You could have left me behind. You still can. He shook his head. Not happening. She hesitated, her voice trembling. If they catch you, they'll kill you for touching royal blood. Ethan smiled. Then I'll make sure they never do. Lyra's eyes softened. You humans are strange. Brave but foolish. Maybe both, he said, chuckling quietly. But sometimes foolish saves lives. She looked away, hiding the small smile forming on her lips. For the first time in her life, she felt something her world had forgotten. Trust. Hours passed. The rain turned into a soft drizzle. Ethan leaned against the cold wall, his body exhausted. Lyra sat near him, staring at the faint blue glow of the bunker lights. Ethan, she said quietly. My father. He's not evil. He's just afraid. Humans once destroyed one of our moons during the war. He still sees you all as monsters. Ethan looked at her, his tone calm. Maybe it's time someone proved him wrong. Just then, the bunker lights flickered again, and a hidden terminal on the far wall came to life. Old holographic data began to project mid-air, recordings from the old war. Soldiers, both human and alien, fighting together, saving one another, dying side by side. Lyra gasped softly. This is proof. My people erased this history. Ethan stepped closer, eyes wide. Then maybe this is what we need. The truth. But before they could study more, the hologram flickered red. A warning message appeared. Unauthorized access detected. Alerting command. Lyra's face turned pale. They found us. Ethan grabbed her hand. Then we move, now. Outside, the sky lit up as dropships began to descend again. This time faster, louder, and armed. The chase wasn't over. It was just beginning, and somewhere above the clouds, Lord Kelthir watched the signal in silence. His face unreadable, his heart torn between fury and fear. Because the human who saved his daughter had just reawakened a truth buried for centuries. Lightning cracked across the green skies of Valara, as the royal ships descended through the storm. Soldiers in golden armor poured into the jungle, their scanners lighting up every shadow, their voices echoing through the trees. They weren't hunting an enemy. They were hunting a human. In the Royal Command Center, high above the capital city, Lord Caelthyr stood before a massive holographic map. His face was hard as stone, his eyes glowing gold with fury. "A human defiles my bloodline, violates every law of our people, and dares to run," he thundered. An officer knelt before him. "My lord, the trackers have locked onto their trail near the southern ridge. The human is injured but still moving. The princess is with him." Caelthyr's jaw tightened. "Then bring them both back." "The human? Alive if possible." "Alive, my lord?" the officer asked cautiously. Caelthyr's golden eyes flashed. "Alive. I want to see the creature who dared save my daughter with his own hands." Far below, in the drenched forest, Ethan and Lyra were running again. The bunker's alarms had given away their position. Drones swept low, firing stun rounds that hissed through the mist. Ethan dove behind a fallen log, pulling Lyra with him. "We can't outrun them forever," she gasped. "They'll surround us." Ethan checked his blaster. "Then we don't run. We fight smart." He scanned the terrain, twisted roots, shallow puddles, and old metal fragments from a past war. He quickly connected his wrist scanner to one of the rusted fragments, turning it into a makeshift EMP trap. Lyra watched in awe. "You humans always find ways to turn junk into weapons." He smiled faintly. "It's a hobby." When the first drone appeared overhead, Ethan waited and triggered the trap. The explosion wasn't loud, but it was bright. A pulse of blue light that fried half the drone swarm instantly. The rest malfunctioned, spiraling down into the mud. For a moment, the jungle fell silent again, the rain masking the faint hum of enemy ships. Lyra looked at him, speechless. "You could have joined our army. You fight better than most soldiers." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't come here to fight anyone. I came to heal people. I'm just a field medic, remember?" Her eyes softened. A medic who saved a life by risking his own. Before Ethan could reply, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. A dark shadow loomed above the trees. A royal cruiser descending slowly, searchlights cutting through the rain. Lyra's breath caught. "That's my father's ship." Ethan turned to her. "Then we're out of time." A thunderous voice echoed through the trees, amplified by the cruiser's speakers. "Lyra of House Caelthyr, step forward. You are safe. The human beside you is a threat to the throne. Surrender him and no harm will come to you." Ethan looked up, eyes narrowing. "He's good at speeches." Lyra's heart twisted painfully. "He'll destroy you if I don't go to him." Ethan stepped closer. "Then let him try. But I'm not giving up on you." For a long moment she stared at him, torn between loyalty and the strange bond forming between them. Then she whispered, "Ethan, you don't understand. My father isn't just a noble. He's the man who ended the human treaty. He blames your kind for every loss our world suffered." Ethan smiled sadly. "Then maybe it's time someone showed him humans aren't his enemy." Before she could protest, a flash grenade exploded nearby, blinding them. Soldiers emerged from the mist, shouting commands. Ethan fired back, stunning one and knocking another off his feet. Lyra tried to shield him, but 2 plasma nets shot out, trapping them both. The last thing Ethan saw before everything went dark was Lyra screaming his name as the soldiers dragged him toward the ship. When he awoke, the world was cold metal and bright lights. He was inside a containment cell aboard the royal cruiser. His wrists were locked with energy cuffs glowing faint blue. Across the room stood Lord Caelthyr himself, tall, commanding, his armor made of golden plates that reflected the chamber's light. "So," Caelthyr began, his voice calm but sharp as a blade, "you are the human who thought himself a hero." Ethan lifted his head slowly. "I didn't think, Lord Caelthyr, I acted. Your daughter was dying. You contaminated her with your filthy blood." Caelthyr snapped. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "I saved her life. You should be thanking me." The alien lord's eyes burned with anger. "Thanking you? You violated sacred law. Do you know what happens when humans break it?" Ethan leaned forward slightly, a faint smirk on his lips. "Maybe you should rewrite your laws then." Caelthyr struck the glass barrier with his fist, the sound echoing like thunder. For a moment, even the guards flinched, but Ethan didn't move. His calm defiance made the alien lord hesitate. For the first time in years, someone had looked him in the eyes without fear. Lyra entered suddenly, breaking the tension. She ran past the guards and stood between her father and Ethan's cell. "Stop this. He's not your enemy. Without him, I'd be dead." Caelthyr's expression softened for a heartbeat, then hardened again. "You've been deceived by a human's lies, my daughter." Ethan spoke softly. "Or maybe she finally saw the truth you've been hiding." Silence filled the chamber. Caelthyr stared at him, his jaw clenched. "You will face judgment at dawn," he said coldly. "And when it's over, no one will ever speak your name again." As he turned to leave, Lyra's trembling hand brushed against the glass of Ethan's cell. "I won't let them kill you," she whispered. He smiled faintly, even through the pain. "Then I guess we're both outlaws now." Outside the ship, thunder rolled once more. Not from the storm this time, but from the rising sound of approaching rebellion. Something was stirring across Valara, and it began with one human who refused to let an alien die. The first light of dawn spilled through the clouded sky of Valara, painting the royal city in gold and ash. The palace courtyard was silent except for the low hum of energy barriers surrounding the stage of judgment. Soldiers in shimmering armor stood in rows, their weapons gleaming. Above them, nobles and citizens filled the high balconies. Whispering in disbelief, a human was to stand trial. Ethan Ward stood at the center of the courtyard, wrists bound by glowing restraints, his clothes torn but his eyes calm. He looked up at the grand throne where Lord Caelthyr sat, the alien noble who had built his power on hatred for humans. Beside him, guarded by two sentinels, stood Lyra, pale but defiant, her eyes locked on Ethan. The herald's voice rang out like thunder. "Ethan Ward of Earth, charged with the contamination of royal blood, violation of Valaran law, and interference with noble lineage. The punishment—" "Enough," Caelthyr interrupted. His tone was cold, commanding. "Let him speak first. I wish to hear what kind of creature dares call himself savior of my daughter." The crowd murmured. No one had ever heard the Lord grant a human a voice. Ethan looked up, breathing slowly. "You want to know why I did it?" He said, "Because she was dying. That's it. Not for reward, not for honor. Just because it was the right thing to do." Caelthyr's expression didn't change. "You risked the wrath of an entire empire for a single alien life?" "Yes," Ethan said firmly. "Because one life matters. Yours, mine, hers. Doesn't matter the species." A ripple spread through the crowd, some shocked, others intrigued. Lyra's eyes glistened, pride and fear mixing in her chest. Caelthyr rose from his throne, his golden cape flowing behind him. "And in saving her, you broke sacred boundaries written long before your kind ever crawled across the stars." Ethan met his gaze without flinching. "Maybe your laws are the problem." Gasps echoed around the courtyard. The guards tensed, raising their weapons. Caelthyr's eyes flared with fury, but before he could speak, Lyra stepped forward. "Father, please," she pleaded. "He saved me when no one else would. You taught me honor, compassion." "Silence!" Caelthyr thundered. "You are my daughter, and you will not speak for a human." But Lyra didn't stop. "Then as your daughter, I demand truth. Why do you hate them so much?" The courtyard fell silent. Caelthyr froze. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, old pain. "Because I watched humans destroy our moon during the war," he said quietly. "I watched my wife die in the fire they caused. I will never forgive them." Ethan's voice softened. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I wasn't there. My people today weren't there. You're blaming every human for what the old ones did." Caelthyr's gaze hardened again. "Your words mean nothing. The law will speak." He raised his hand. The herald began to read the sentence. "By the decree of the Valaran High Council, the human known as Ethan Ward shall be executed at sundown. No." Lyra's cry cut through the air like lightning. She broke free from her guards and ran to the platform, standing between Ethan and her father's soldiers. "If you kill him, you'll have to kill me too," the crowd gasped. Caelthyr's hand trembled as he stared at his daughter, the one person he swore to protect defying him in front of the entire court. "You don't know what you're doing," he whispered. Lyra lifted her chin, tears glimmering on her cheeks. "I do. I'm doing what he did, saving someone who deserves to live." Ethan looked at her, stunned. "Lyra," she smiled faintly, "you once said humans don't leave anyone behind. Maybe I learned something from you." Caelthyr's rage turned to disbelief, then something else. Doubt. His heart battled between pride and love, vengeance and truth. He turned away for a moment, trying to hide the storm within him. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed from the distance. A massive energy blast lit up the horizon. The palace trembled. Everyone turned and saw rebel ships emerging from the clouds. Lyra's eyes widened. That's impossible. Kael'thir's voice darkened. It's not rebels. It's the Dominion. They've come for us, Ethan frowned. Who? Lyra's face turned pale. The Dominion are warlords from the outer systems. They hate both humans and Valarans. If they invade the capital... Kael'thir finished grimly. There will be no Valara left to rule. Panic spread among the nobles. Alarms blared. Soldiers ran to their stations. Ethan glanced at Kael'thir. You can keep fighting old ghosts, or fight the real enemy standing at your gates. The alien lord stared at him, the weight of choice heavy in his golden eyes. For the first time, he didn't see a human prisoner. He saw a soldier, a man who might save his world the same way he had saved his daughter. Kael'thir turned to his guards. Release him. The soldiers hesitated. My lord, and I said release him. The energy cuffs around Ethan's wrists dissolved. He rubbed his hands, then looked up at the alien lord. Guess I'm not getting executed today. Kael'thir's voice was low but steady. Don't thank me yet, human. You wanted to prove your kind isn't the enemy. Ethan nodded. Then fight beside me, Kael'thir said. Show Valara what your humanity truly means. The sky above them burned red as Dominion warships descended through the clouds, their weapons locking onto the capital. Ethan looked at Lyra, then back at Kael'thir. Looks like we don't have much time. And as the sirens wailed and the first blast struck the city walls, the unthinkable alliance began, between a grieving alien lord, his defiant daughter, and one human who refused to stop saving lives. The sky above Valara turned crimson as the Dominion warships tore through the clouds. The capital trembled beneath their sonic booms. Towers that once shone like jewels now flickered with alarm lights. For the first time in a century, the alien noble city faced an invasion, not from humans, but from something far worse. Inside the royal command hall, chaos reigned. Soldiers shouted reports, alarms screamed, and the hum of distant plasma fire echoed through the walls. Lord Kael'thir stood at the central console, issuing commands in a calm but deadly voice. Redirect the planetary shields to cover the eastern quarter, he ordered. Deploy all air skimmers. The Dominion wants the capital. They'll get a fight they won't forget. His officers saluted, rushing to obey. But one figure stood apart. Ethan Ward, the human who had been sentenced to die only hours ago. Now, instead of chains, he wore a combat vest taken from a fallen guard, and his eyes were fixed on the holographic display of the battlefield. They're jamming your orbital defense, Ethan said quickly. Their ships are running on stealth plasma. Your radar won't catch them in time. Kael'thir turned toward him, his golden eyes narrowing. Then what do you suggest, human? Ethan pointed to the map. They're clustering near the power relay fields north of the city. If we reroute the shield generators there, we can overload their sensors, blind them for at least 5 minutes. An officer protested. That's insane. It would fry half our city grid. Ethan shrugged. Better half the grid than the whole planet. Kael'thir studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Do it. Lyra stepped forward from the shadows, still dressed in the ceremonial robe from the trial. Father let me go with him. I know the tunnels beneath the relay fields. He'll need guidance. Kael'thir hesitated, torn between command and fatherhood. Then he said quietly, Go. But if you see the Dominion soldiers, don't hesitate. Lyra nodded, determination burning in her silver-blue eyes. Moments later, she and Ethan were speeding through the lower tunnels in an old hovercraft. The hum of its engine echoed off metal walls, and the smell of ozone filled the air. Outside, distant explosions painted the night in flashes of orange and blue. Ethan gripped the controls, his voice steady. You sure this thing won't fall apart? Lyra gave a small laugh. If it does, I'll blame you. He smiled faintly. Fair. They reached the relay field, a vast plain of glowing towers surrounded by storm clouds and ash. The ground shook with every bombardment from above. Ethan jumped out first, scanning the area. They've already landed. Dominion troops, east side. Lyra looked toward the horizon, her face pale. The Dominion soldiers were nothing like the Valarans. Their armor was black as obsidian, their movements silent and precise. They didn't take prisoners. Ethan crouched beside a console, connecting a power link from his wrist device. I need 2 minutes to override this system, he said. Lyra knelt beside him, covering his back with a plasma rifle she'd taken from the armory. You've got 1 minute. They're closing fast. Ethan worked quickly, sweat dripping down his forehead as sparks flew from the old machinery. Almost there. Then, a sound like cracking glass. A sniper blast tore through the air, hitting the ground inches from Lyra's feet. Down, Ethan shouted, pulling her behind cover. Plasma bolts rained around them, lighting the field in blinding blue flashes. Dominion soldiers charged, their weapons slicing through the air. Ethan returned fire, taking one down with a well-aimed shot. You okay? Lyra nodded, though her hands shook. I'm fine, keep going. He looked at her, then back at the control pad. We need a surge boost. I'll draw their fire. You overload the main conduit. Her eyes widened. That's suicide. He grinned. Not if you're faster than me. Before she could stop him, Ethan sprinted out into the open, firing wildly to distract the soldiers. Plasma blasts struck all around him, each one closer than the last. He dove behind a fallen relay tower, yelling, Now Lyra! She took a deep breath, placed her glowing hands on the console, and released her energy. The machine screamed as circuits melted, lights flared, then everything went white. A massive energy wave exploded outward, throwing the Dominion troops off their feet. Their stealth cloaks flickered and failed. In orbit, their ships blinked on sensors like wounded fireflies. Inside the command hall, Kael'thir watched the hologram as Dominion positions lit up in red. His officers cheered. They're exposed, my lord. Kael'thir allowed himself a rare smile. Then strike them down. Back on the ground, Ethan and Lyra lay amid the smoking wreckage. The rain hissed against the burning towers. Ethan coughed, rolling over, his hair singed and face blackened with soot. Lyra crawled to him, voice trembling. Ethan, say something. He looked up dazed and gave a weak grin. Told you. I could handle it. She laughed through tears, helping him sit. Around them, the Dominion soldiers were retreating, their dropships lifting off as Valaran defense forces swarmed the field. Lyra looked at him with awe. You didn't just save me this time. You saved the whole city. Ethan glanced at the rising smoke. Let's call it a team effort. From above, Kael'thir's ship descended. Soldiers surrounded the area, scanning for survivors. When the noble stepped out, his armor still gleaming despite the ash, his gaze fell on Ethan, and for the first time it held no hatred. He extended his hand. Human, you've earned more than forgiveness. Ethan hesitated, then took the alien's hand firmly. Guess we're allies now. Kael'thir nodded slowly. No, after this, we're brothers in war. As the storm cleared and the sun rose again over the battered city, a strange peace settled on Valara, a fragile, glowing hope born from a serpent's bite and a human's courage. But far beyond the sky, in the cold void of space, a shadow stirred, the true master of the Dominion, and his eyes now turned toward Earth. The storm had ended, but the city of Valara Prime still smoked under the pale morning sun. The scent of burnt metal mixed with the clean air of renewal. Towers that had once shimmered with golden light were scarred, yet still standing, just like the people who defended them. On the royal balcony, Ethan Ward stood beside Lord Kael'thir and Lyra, looking over the city. Workers and medics, human and alien alike, were rebuilding side by side. Something had changed overnight. The centuries-old divide between species had cracked open, not through politics or war, but through one man's act of compassion. Lyra turned to Ethan, her silver blue eyes soft. You did it, she said quietly. You made my father see what I couldn't. Ethan smiled faintly, his voice tired but calm. No, you did. You made him listen. Kael'thir, standing tall in his ceremonial armor, looked out over his people. For years I taught them that humanity was chaos. Selfishness. Destruction, he said slowly. Yet it was a human who reminded us what it means to be alive. Ethan chuckled. Not bad for someone you were about to execute yesterday. Kael'thir almost smiled. Perhaps judgment should wait for understanding. They stood in silence for a while, watching as a group of alien children helped human engineers lift debris. One of the kids, and with silver skin and bright green eyes, waved at Ethan. He waved back, smiling. But peace never lasted long on a world like Valara. A deep hum filled the air, distant but growing. The sky shimmered as several massive Dominion ships appeared at the edge of orbit. One of the officers inside the palace shouted, Incoming vessels! They're hailing us! Kelthir frowned. I thought we drove them out. Ethan's gaze darkened. We did. That's not an attack formation. That's a message. The main holographic screen flickered to life, showing a dark figure seated on a throne made of black steel and bone. His eyes glowed crimson. His voice was calm, smooth, and terrifying. So, the Dominion leader said, the mighty Kelthir allies with a human? How poetic. Your weakness has cost you everything. Kelthir straightened. You speak of weakness, yet you hide behind fleets and fear. Velara stands free. The figure leaned forward. Not for long. The Dominion will rise again. And when we do, your human pet will be the first to burn. Ethan stepped forward. You talk too much. You lost because you underestimated people like me and like her. He nodded toward Lyra. The Dominion leader smiled thinly. You think one human's courage will save your kind? No, boy, it will doom them. The galaxy will learn your name and hate your species even more for it. The signal cut off, leaving a chilling silence. Lyra turned to Ethan, her voice trembling. He means to make you a symbol of everything they fear. Ethan nodded. Then I'll use that. Let them fear me if it keeps others alive. Kelthir's gaze softened, filled with something unfamiliar. Pride. You would fight for us again? Ethan looked out at the horizon where the sun rose over the wounded city. If you'll have me. The alien lord placed a hand on his shoulder. Then you are no longer a guest of Velara nor a prisoner. You are its protector. Hours later in the Grand Assembly Hall a crowd gathered. Humans, aliens, soldiers, workers, and all together for the first time in living memory. Lyra stood before them, her voice echoing through the crystal dome. Yesterday we were divided, she said. Today we rebuild, and we will remember the one truth that saved us. Compassion has no species. The crowd cheered. Ethan stood in the back, uneasy under the attention. When Lyra finished, she looked at him with a small, knowing smile. You should say something, she whispered. He stepped forward reluctantly, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm not good at speeches, he began, earning a few laughs. But I'll say this, I didn't come here to be a hero. I came to help a friend. Turns out helping one person can change a whole world. Applause erupted. Some of the aliens even raised their hands in salute, the human gesture of respect. Ethan smiled awkwardly, stepping back beside Lyra. She leaned close and whispered, You just united two worlds with one sentence. He grinned. Guess I should write that down. That night, as the stars returned to the clear sky, Ethan stood alone at the edge of the royal terrace. The jungle beyond the city shimmered with life again. He heard footsteps behind him, light and familiar. Lyra stood beside him, her hair glowing faintly under the starlight. You're leaving, aren't you? She asked softly. Ethan nodded. For now. There's more out there. Other worlds, other people who need help. She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. Will you come back? He turned to her, smiling gently. If the stars allow it. She smiled through her tears. You humans, always turning promises into poetry. He laughed quietly, then stepped closer, pressing something into her hand, a small, worn patch from his uniform. A reminder, he said, that even in the darkest place there's someone who'll stay and fight. Lyra closed her hand around it tightly. Goodbye, Ethan Ward. Not goodbye, he said, looking up at the twin moons, just until next time. And with that, the human who had once been condemned walked into the night, leaving behind a world forever changed, a world that had learned that humanity was not a curse, but a gift. Above Velara, the stars shimmered brighter than ever, as if the universe itself was whispering one truth. Compassion is the only force that can unite the galaxies.